Welcome to Side Hustle Paradise. I'm your host, Marc, the podcast and virtual summit launch coach, bringing you expert sessions from top side hustlers and business owners where we teach you how to boost your income and do the work that you love. And part of doing the work that you love is figuring out what your highest impact activities are. There are going to be some things that naturally allow you to move your business forward more than others. We have to figure out what those things are, and we have to focus our time around those areas. So that's why we have our expert for this session, who has been helping small business and medium-sized companies reach new customers and create a step-by-step marketing plan for the past 4 years. He started his own company, Jacob LE, 4 years ago with the goal of helping over 1,000 businesses gain new clients through online marketing. Our expert who joins us for this session is none other than Jacob Landis-Eigsti. Jacob, welcome to the summit.
Thanks so much. So happy to be here.
Jacob, I'm so happy to have you on Side Hustle Paradise, and I just feel like it's really important you have a really great focus point where we figure out what is the highest impact activity. What are these few things that lead to the most results? And I'm wondering if you can just share with us a little bit. I feel like part of that is avoiding distractions. So I think we should start with how do we avoid distraction and then move on to that highest impact activity.
Yeah, I think that is so huge. It's been a huge change. I've turned off basically all of my notifications. I'm really trying to do emails like twice a day and just keep super focused. I have like a daily planner where I try to schedule everything out. And it's just so helpful thinking like, what can I do today that's going to have the biggest impact? And then I'll usually get up early and just check that off very first thing, because it's so easy to get pulled in a million different directions or have your mindset thrown off or things like that. So really trying to help people design a system where they can stick with it and check off the most important things possible.
And it is very interesting. Jacob mentions he turns all these different things off because you can get something like a ping or a notification that can really take your mind off the task. Now, just because you're doing a task doesn't mean it's the best one. That's why Jacob focuses on helping people find these high impact activities. And how can we more easily figure out what our highest impact activities are?
Yeah, well, a big part of what I do, I am a little bit more marketing focused, and I think so many issues or problems I've run into can be solved with having much, much better clients who are actually willing to pay a lot more. And, the system I went through when I first started was I would spend a lot of time lining people up. I'd be working 100 hours a week. A lot of nightmare clients, and then that would go away and it would be back to the drawing board. So a big part of it is trying to find like a very steady flow of customers that you can count on and actually have the opportunity to say no to a lot of people and to work with people who it's an amazing fit and they can pay you really well.
And I mean, it is important, Jacob brings up, you want to find a few people who can pay you well. And it's tempting to, branch out into all these different areas. And then you look at the end results and you're like, ooh, that's not bringing anything in. That's not the impact that I'm looking for. But there are some things with a long-term play, like, growing a brand and things like that and focusing on some social networks. How do we find that balance between spending a lot of time on things that aren't bringing impact yet, but can very soon, versus things that can bring in impact right away?
Well, I think in terms of attracting customers, I think a lot of people pretty quickly jump to like tactics like Facebook ads or this other thing. And I think central to a strategy is like a really strong core on like exactly who your customer is, and not just demographics, but like how they think, what keeps them up at night. I have a lot of people almost like writing a page out of their diary that really helps you communicate well. So often that's just having that really strong foundational core will make anything else you do is just so much easier, because you'll be speaking like directly to them and connecting very specifically with them. And I think also just not getting pulled into, it's so easy to see a thing on like, oh, I should do Facebook ads or this other thing, and you're just jumping around. And to really crush it at any of those, it takes a lot of like learning and adapting, sometimes investment, and really like pushing forward for like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Whereas a lot of people, they hear about something, they kind of dabble in it, they do a little bit, and then they're on to the next thing without seeing any significant results.
Yeah, and I mean, it is very important to figure out who your avatar is and think more about the customer because, again, you can rush into strategies and different tactics, but it is important to think about who it is that you're marketing to and figuring out where that person is. And for some people, that person's going to be at an event. For other people, you're going to find your people in the Facebook group, but it's important to figure out where your avatar is and then figure out how can you spend as much time in there as possible. Now, there are some logistical things you have to do. Like you can't be in that area 24/7 for most people unless you do have like a ton of virtual assistants. So how do you suggest we don't spend as much of our time on like the lower impact activities as we do on the high impact activities, especially considering what Pareto's principle tells us about, the 80/20?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love 80/20 and try to think about that for every single thing. Um, Sometimes with the social networks, especially since there's so many of them, it's like using a scheduler just so I'm not getting randomly sucked in, or, if I'm going to comment or find people strategically, like that's my task. It's just so easy to get pulled in a whole bunch of different directions. And I always think about like, what's the return on time going to be in addition to return on investment? A lot of people think of like Facebook is just kind of like free, but you really want to be doing it in a way that it's going to actually lead to results. Like I met one person, he basically tanked his business just by chasing Instagram likes, doing it 5 hours a day, did 2,000 posts, and he'd never gotten a customer from it. So it's really tracking like the really important metrics when you're doing it and thinking, okay, like is this going to lead to a sale or customers or me hitting my goals?
Yeah, that's a really great point. I love you bring up Instagram because I feel like with Instagram, with TikTok, like you hear about this new social network and you think you have to be on it. This is the social network, and you hear that from people, but is it leading to money or is it leading to likes, which don't pay the bills? Now, I'm not saying likes are bad. If you like a video on my YouTube channel, I'd be very happy about that, but it's not necessarily something that pays the bills. And you do have to think in the way of like getting more clients, and is this going to put me in front of my avatar versus is this something that I'm only doing because someone said it's a good idea, but it doesn't connect with my strategy?
Yeah, and I think enjoyment is really a big part. So sometimes there's stuff that can be really effective that you don't enjoy, and usually you can outsource that. But I just meet so many people who are like, oh, I have to be on Facebook and I have to be posting this one thing. And they've just been not being very strategic and just throwing stuff up there because they feel like they have to and getting zero results. And it's like, you don't have to do that. Like, you can focus on the things yourself with your valuable time that you enjoy doing, that you're good at. And I mean, anything social, I think you have to be really creative and willing to try new things, because I think some people just recycle the same thing over and over because that's what they see or think they should be doing. And it's like, if you really want to grow it, it's like trying some stuff that really doesn't work, and then some other stuff may take off. So like being strategic and creative with that, if you actually want to commit to the months and months it'll take to grow a specific channel.
Yeah, and I love how you say you got to commit to several months because there are some people who they want a fast fix to achieve the different results that they're going for. And I feel like when you are, especially when you're new into a business, there could be a little like lack of faith or like lack of trust in like, the journey. And also you've got what is your highest impact activity? Like you don't know in the beginning, it's got to be where the avatar is. But during those early stages where you're not seeing the results, like what advice would you have for that person who they're not seeing results early? You got results later down the line just because that's just how businesses work. What advice do you have for that person?
Anytime you can work with or talk with someone who's kind of been through that journey and has a good idea. Like, for example, I did a lot of like blogging and SEO for my site, and had talked with people and knew it was like to plan on at least like 6 months, and it's kind of going to be a ghost town for like a little while. But I had a good idea of the process, and I could see it just with so many things, it's like compounding. It's like when you have like 10 visitors, if it increases like 20% a month, that feels like nothing. But like as it grows and grows, suddenly like 6 months, that became like my number one source of income and something that I could count on. It was just a very consistent thing. But yeah, it was tough for those first 3 or 4 months, because it's just like, man, I put in so much work, effort, and it took a while for that really to be effective and take off.
And for people who maybe they feel a little stuck with their side hustle, like they've been at it for more than 6 months, they haven't really seen the results yet, what would you say that these groups of people could do differently so that they could kind of change the script and get the results they're looking for?
I mean, I think one thing that's important is just building a business definitely takes time and a lot of effort, and getting knocked down and hit down. Like I started doing this just on the weekends and the evenings, and it really took 3 years until I 100% replaced it to where I started with a full-time job, then I moved down to a part-time job, then I moved down to doing this 100%. But yeah, I think having that strategic plan, I often talk about with marketing, it's almost like a buffet where there's like 100 different choices people could choose from. And usually people just kind of grab stuff and throw it on their plate. But, you know, actually looking at all the different options and picking something that looks amazing and sticking with it, and talking with an expert or someone who's been through growing a channel who can tell you, yeah, okay, you're seeing a good amount of progress for the work you put in or how far in you are. Because I have seen some people who are just feeling like, oh, I just need to stick with it and keep posting to YouTube. And I know one person with 200 videos and 8 subscribers because they're just not learning, or it's just not keyworded at all, or like anything people are searching. So everyone's journey toward growth and success is different, but having some sort of ballpark is really helpful, and a way to actually keep track of it is really important as well.
Yeah, and it's very important to keep track. I mean, Jacob mentions that really key point, because you don't just want to guess and see, like, you know, based on feel, if you are growing or if you're going in the direction. You want to be able to track it. You want to be able to track revenue growth. I mean, that's why I track my income each month, and it's good to see that kind of growth, or see if something is a bad month, like what was different. And tracking is just something so important you should do for any of your goals.
Yeah, and I think it's so valuable if you can be like, here's how much a customer is worth to me. Here's how much I'm willing to spend to get that customer. Here's how much it's costing me to get that customer. Because then sometimes you can scale it like crazy, or like I work with a lot of realtors and they're really afraid to spend a tiny bit of money to get a new customer that'll bring them like $13,000 or something like that, which, I mean, it takes a lot of work too, but when people say, okay, I'm comfortable spending this much money or this much time getting a customer, then all of a sudden it's like you're getting a bunch of customers at lower than that. You can really scale that and keep it going on and on and on. If you have an ad that's performing super well, like don't turn it off. Like just keep it running. That's going to be so valuable for your business. With mine, just those ongoing sources of income have been so key, because it's like the up and downs that can really make your income. Like it's tough if you make 7,000 one month and 1,000 the other month, and you're killing yourself one month, and then you're have too little to do the next as you're lining up future customers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point how you mentioned 7,000 one month, 1,000 the other month. And you do have to figure out that consistency. How do you earn consistent income? And that's through like continuing to fill your pipeline. That's through recurring revenue. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you do want to think like, how can I build up a base, a recurring revenue stream, so that you don't have that type of scenario? And I mean, all of it really comes down to figuring out those highest impact activities and really committing to them, figuring out where your avatar is and going to where they hang out. So speaking of where people hang out, Jacob, where exactly do you hang out on the web, and where can we continue to follow your journey?
Yeah, so I do a lot through my website, jacob-le.com. I'm really working on my YouTube channel. That's my big project for 2020, especially since I've now got like a planner and a course that are pretty closely linked with that, and an ebook. I do some on Instagram and Pinterest, but yeah, as time has gone on, I've decided to really just like put heavy focus onto one or two, just because it's so easy to have your attention spread between 7 things, and then you don't really see the kind of growth that you want on each one.
Well, we'll definitely have links below for anyone who wants to follow Jacob on all those different places. But once again, thank you so much for coming on Side Hustle Paradise. It was such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.